Cool. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for having me at this conference. So yes, today I'm going to be taking you through the use of artificial intelligence in banking, a journey from judgment to generation, and I hope the name will make a bit more sense as we go through. Now, specifically within the banking industry, I've been working in credit modeling for a few years. So I'm an actuary by trade. I studied at the University of the Free State, and then I moved up to Joburg. And I've been working in life insurance, investments, data science consulting, and more recently in banking. So today I want to take you through the evolution of a credit decision. And we're going to be splitting this up into 4 distinct eras on how a credit decision has changed over the many years that banks have been involved in lending money, essentially. So we're going to start with the judgmental era, then we move into the statistical era, then the machine learning era, and then the new kid on the block, the generative era. So if we move into the first era, the judgmental era, this was essentially the art of credit. So the decision to lend money is a foundational act of banking. So it's an exercise in predicting the future, a calculated bet on a borrower's ability and willingness to repay a debt. And for centuries, the tools for making this decision were based on entirely human interaction. So intuition, experience, and personal relationships. So this was the era of judgmental credit. And prior to the mid-20th century, credit origination was deeply localized and a personal affair, where a loan officer or a bank manager would literally sit with an applicant, and they would talk through sort of a credit application. And they would use a qualitative assessment known as the 5 C's of credit to actually make that decision on whether a customer should get a loan or not. The 5 C's are character, so the borrower's reputation and their standing in society. Do you have a good reputation, or are you known as the dodgy guy who gambles away half of his money? Capacity. Do you actually have an income? What's your expenses like? Would you be able to repay the loan? Capital, so sort of a sense of your net worth. Collateral, so are there any assets backing your application? And conditions, so the economic conditions that are prevailing at the time. So this system was an art because it just relied on this banker's subjective assessment and their personal knowledge of the applicant. Now, the weakness of judgmental credit was that it was ultimately unsustainable in a rapidly growing, increasingly autonomous and anonymous economy. So the system was quite inconsistent and prone to bias. So decisions would vary dramatically from one loan officer to another, and there could easily be conscious and unconscious biases that come into these decisions. Furthermore, they were slow, they were manual, and therefore completely unscalable, and they couldn't keep up with the growing demand for credit. So therefore, a better technique was required. Then we moved into the statistical era, or the science. So the transition from art to science began in the 1950s with the work from engineer Bill Fair and mathematician Earl Isaac. And they founded a company called FICO, or Fair, Isaac and Company. And they're still a multi-billion-dollar US-based company. And their revolutionary premise was that historical data could be used to predict future loan performance. And that gave birth to what we know today as the credit score. The technology at the heart of this revolution was not overly complex by today's standards. They essentially relied on logistic regression models to predict a binary outcome, whether a customer would be able to default, whether a customer would be able to repay a loan, or whether they would default. The model works by assigning weights to various pieces of information or features from a credit application's credit bureau report, and features could include things like outstanding debt, payment history, so have you ever been late on any other payments, or have you missed any payment recently, how long have you had a credit history, the types of credit that you have. The impact of this innovation was monumental. Credit scoring introduced objectivity, consistency, and speed into the decision-making process, and it allowed for near-instant credit decisions to be made, dramatically reducing operational cost, and most importantly, it helped to democratize credit, making it accessible to individuals based on their financial behavior rather than their social connections or their background. Decisions that once took days could now be done in seconds. And this scientific approach laid the foundation for the mass consumer credit market that we see today. However, these simple models had their limitations. They operated on linear assumptions, meaning they assumed a straightforward additive relationship between input features and the risk of default. They struggled to capture complex, non-linear interactions in the data. For example, a low income might be a significant risk factor for a young applicant, but for a retiree with a substantial asset base, a lower income is not necessarily that big a risk. A traditional credit scorecard might miss this nuance. Furthermore, they were limited to structured data, and they could not really use what we call today alternative data. So they were limited, They were limited to using credit bureau data. The quest for greater predictive power would lead finance into the next frontier, the machine learning phase. But first, an example of a sort of a normal credit scorecard. So what I have on screen here is a hypothetical example of what a credit scorecard looks like. And you've got characteristics like age, home ownership status, and income. And there are different ranges for each of these attributes. And each of these could give you a number of points. So the customer on the top right, age 31, owning their own house and with a certain salary, would get a certain number of points, and that points would put you on some form of a scale on your credit score. And this is explainable to a customer, and you can tell or show a customer if they did not qualify for a loan, sort of where they need to improve and how they can actually qualify for a loan. So this is sort of the standard credit scorecard layout. But then we moved into the machine learning revolution. So the limitations of these traditional statistical models became more apparent as computational power grew and as the volume of available data exploded. The financial industry began to look towards more sophisticated set of tools, collectively known as machine learning or ML, to gain the competitive edge. This marked a shift from explaining risk with simple interpretable models to predicting it with maximum accuracy, even if the underlying logic was more complex. Unlike logistic regression models that require humans to pre-select features and define their relationships, machine learning algorithms can learn complex patterns and find interactions in the data automatically. They excel at finding subtle, non-linear signals that traditional models would miss. The advantage of these ML models is their ability to consume and find value in a much wider array of data sources. Beyond traditional credit bureau data, lenders could now incorporate alternative data, such as utility payments, rental payments, educational background, and even digital footprints or telecommunications data. A machine learning model might discover, for example, that there's an interaction between the time of day a customer applies for a loan and the applicant's email domain provider, and that provides a small but significant predictor of potential fraud. And that's a pattern that no human would have modeled in a logistic regression type model, where you essentially need to give the model the relationships between features. So this superior predictive power, or lift, translates directly into business value, lower default rates, more accurate risk pricing, and the ability to safely extend credit to what we call thin file customers. So customers where there isn't sufficient credit bureau data available to make a decision on. So I've personally been working on alternative data for the last few years, and it's a very rewarding field because it gives us the ability to look for new data sources that we can use to give customers their first loan. Because it's about a bit of a chicken and egg problem to get your first loan. Because the bank wants to see your credit profile to see that you're able to repay a loan. But if you don't have a credit profile, you can't get your first loan. So traditionally, the retailers were the first movers to give a customer a retail store account. And that could at least get you onto the credit bureau sort of radar. But using alternative data, we are now finding other ways to actually predict whether customers will be able to repay their debt. And then we don't just need to rely on credit bureau data. Now, machine learning models comes with their own challenges. They are seen as black boxes. That scorecard model I showed you was fairly simple to understand. You could really see where your score comes from. Now, this image on screen is an illustration of a gradient-boosted tree model, which is one of the workhorses that we use in machine learning. And although they are extremely predictive, it's much harder to explain the result, and that's where the challenge comes in. Also because we have to be able to give a customer a good reason when we decline them. And simply saying that the model predicts that you have a higher risk of default isn't good enough. We need to be able to say which specific features or which specific pieces of data caused you to not qualify for your loan. Just to touch on a few other machine learning use cases within the bank, we also use machine learning to predict fraud and to try and avoid fraud. We use it to predict anti-money laundering, so to detect illicit flows of money. We also run quite a few recommendation engines or next best action models. We also use it for predictive underwriting in insurance, and then also in what we call contactability models. So knowing what the best time is to contact the customer and what the best channel is. So all of these are different ways in which we're using machine learning models today. So this regulatory regulatory requirement to be able to explain the results from a machine learning model as fueled growth in a new field called explainable AI. So techniques like SHAP and LIME have been given us the ability to sort of peer into the black box that a machine learning model can be. While these tools are quite powerful, they still provide an approximation of the model's behavior and not a direct replication of the logic. So the acceptance by regulators is still an evolving area. Then a big topic in machine learning and AI generally is bias and fairness. So AI models are a product of the data that they are trained on. So if historical data that models are trained on reflects societal biases, the models will learn, codify, and sometimes even amplify those biases at scale. So for decades, lending practices in many countries included discriminatory practices, where entire neighborhoods were often denied credit because of their racial or ethnic composition. So even if protected characteristics like race are excluded from the training data on a model, machine learning models have a way of finding proxies and might still be able to find highly correlated features with race and would still be able to perpetuate a bias in a model. So this creates this fundamental tension between a model's predictive accuracy and its fairness. So a model optimized purely for minimizing the default rate might learn that certain demographic groups are statistically riskier based on biased historical data and systematically assign them lower scores. Addressing this requires a conscious effort to implement fairness-aware machine learning, which involves using specific metrics like demographic parity or equalized odds, to audit models and for bias, and to apply techniques to mitigate it, sometimes at the cost of small decreases in predictive accuracy. So I guess it's fair to say that this machine learning era of credit modeling we are still in the machine learning era of credit modeling. And there's varying speeds of adoption in different industries or in different markets, depending on sophistication and the regulatory landscape. But then came the paradigm shift, generative AI. So up until now, we've been talking about predictive AI, or machine learning, where we train a model to predict something specific, a yes or a no, where generative AI can actually generate new content. So the emergence of a new architecture and a new class of model, generative AI, has triggered a paradigm shift, moving AI's capabilities from perception and prediction to understanding, creation, and interaction. The shift has the potential to reshape not just credit, but the entire landscape of financial services. To understand the generative AI revolution, one must go back to the groundbreaking 2017 research paper from Google titled "Attention is All You Need." Prior to this paper, the dominant models for processing language processed words sequentially, word by word, which made them slow and fundamentally limited in their ability to grasp long-range dependencies in text. The authors of the paper introduced a novel architecture called the transformer. And the transformer's core innovation was the self-attention mechanism. So instead of processing words one by one, the attention mechanism allows the model to look at all the words at once and dynamically weigh the importance of all other words when interpreting one word. Ironically, although Google gifted this paper to the world, they were not the first to market with a sort of a customer-facing version of generative AI. That came with the ChatGPT moment. So from 2017, when Google came out with that groundbreaking research, LLMs, or large language models, have been developing in labs, but it really took off when OpenAI launched ChatGPT in November of 2022. It was almost like the iPhone moment for AI. For the first time, hundreds of millions of people could interact directly with highly capable AI through a simple conversational interface. The world witnessed firsthand its capability to write essays, debug code, explain complex topics, and engage in nuanced conversation. The ChatGPT moment fundamentally changed the conversation around AI in the boardroom. It was no longer an abstract tool for data scientists to improve models. It's now a tangible, powerful platform for augmenting knowledge work, automating communication, and creating entirely new customer experiences. The shift of AI in finance began to shift from purely about prediction, will this person default, to include generation and understanding, i.e. summarize this loan application and highlight the risks, or draft a personalized email to a customer explaining a new product. So one of the biggest use cases today in banking for generative AI is to revolutionize customer experience. So traditional chatbots were quite rigid and rules-based systems, where generative AI enables the creation of sophisticated virtual financial assistants that can engage in natural, empathetic conversations. You can imagine a customer being able to ask, I'm thinking about buying a new car, costing around 400,000 rands. Based on my current income and spending, what kind of monthly payment could I realistically afford? And a generative AI-powered agent can essentially go and look at a customer's transaction history for income and expenses, explain different loan products, look at the customer's financial position holistically, and guide them through the application process in a seamless conversation. Also, these agents don't sleep, so they can be online around the clock. Although LLMs aren't necessarily great at maths themselves, leveraging agentic frameworks, one can allow agents to actually use tools and use calculators. So if the bank has an existing loan calculator tool, the LLM agent can actually leverage that instead of trying to do the maths himself. The risk of hallucinations can also be somewhat mitigated by techniques such as RAG, or Retrieval Augmented Generation, which basically forces the AI to answer questions only with reference to a specific set of text or documents. So this could be the bank's credit policy or the bank's advice philosophy or detailed product guides. The other big use case is to really supercharge operations in the back office. So LLM's ability to read, summarize, and synthesize vast amounts of unstructured text is a huge benefit for financial institutions, which are drowning in documents. Although credit models as described earlier, where we predict default, aren't going away anytime soon, generative AI can enhance these models due to its ability to analyze unstructured data, such as bank statements, financial statements, and many other documents. You can imagine an application for a company to get a loan, so a commercial loan application is much more complicated than an application for an individual, because there are financial statements and many other documents at play. And historically, those applications have been much more manual because of that. But generative AI actually allows us to streamline even commercial loan applications significantly. Generative AI-based coding assistants are also helping to make data scientists and developers much more productive by reducing the amount of mundane work and automating simple tasks. In the marketing space, we're even looking at using generative AI to create personalized marketing messages for customers that take their unique context into account, which leads to better outcomes and therefore higher return on investment. So the journey of AI in banking and finance has been a relentless march from human intuition to machine intelligence. We've traveled from the banker's personal judgment, a system built on relationships and character, to the simple elegance of a statistical scorecard, which brought scale and objectivity to consumer credit. This was followed by the machine learning revolution, which unlocked unprecedented predictive accuracy through complex algorithms, but also introduced profound challenges of opacity, bias, and regulatory friction. Today, we're in the midst of another, perhaps even more significant transformation, the rise of generative AI, catalyzed by breakthroughs like the transformer architecture and brought to life by models like ChatGPT. The focus is expanding from mere prediction to a deeper intelligence capable of understanding, summarizing, generating, and interacting. The shift is not just creating better credit models, it's creating intelligent agents that can hyper-personalize customer service, supercharge operational efficiency by digesting mountains of unstructured data, and democratize the creation of financial software and analytics. Yet, as we embrace these powerful new tools, the core challenges remain, and in some ways are amplified. The black box of a massive large language model is even more inscrutable than that of a gradient-boosted machine learning model. The potential for these models to generate biased or simply incorrect or hallucinated information is a significant risk in a high-stakes environment like finance. The regulatory landscape is also racing to adapt to technology that's evolving faster than any before it. The future of finance will most likely not be run by a world of autonomous AI, but rather one of human-machine collaboration. AI will be the engine that processes data at scale and complexity far beyond human capability, identifying patterns, assessing risks, and automating routine tasks. This will empower human experts to be more effective, freeing them from mundane work to focus on what humans do best: strategic thinking, complex problem-solving, ethical oversight, and building genuine trust-based relationships with clients. The financial institutions that will thrive in the coming decades will be those that master this symbiotic relationship, successfully navigating the power of AI while upholding the principles of prudence, fairness, and trust. Thank you. So, just to show you that I don't just talk AI, I also use AI. All the images here were generated by Gemini 2.5 Pro. So if you see in the bottom right-hand corner of each of those images, there's this little Gemini logo. So with a simple prompt, I could generate each of these images, like, one sentence. And a lot of the text also generated by generative AI and then vetted by a human. And just to end with a quote, so I don't think AI will be replacing humans anytime soon. I think humans using AI are much more likely to replace you in the near future. Thanks.